You're like the fifth person that's asked
Well, no,
me that
because
today. What is going on? Since when did people start asking each other in interviews about their underwear?
No, because it is such a skin tight. Here's why.
I'll leave it up to your imagination.
In every era, there is a face that becomes more than a face, an energy, a symbol, a mirror reflecting both the brilliance and the fragility of human ambition. For modern Hollywood, that figure is Scarlett Johansson. To millions, she is the untouchable star of the Marvel Universe, the ethereal soul of Lost in Translation, a performer who moves through genres as if she were shifting between worlds. But beneath the glow of global fame lies a woman shaped not by perfection, but by tension, between who she is and who the world expects her to be, between the weight of silence and the demands of a voice that cannot hide forever. Her story does not begin on a red carpet. It begins in the quiet corners of doubt, in the echoing rooms of ambition, in the small, unseen moments where pain becomes fuel. Scarlett's life is a tale of contrasts, luminous success shadowed by overwhelming solitude, the roar of millions contrasted with the soft, unsteady heartbeat of a girl who once wondered whether she would ever be enough. Fame brought her adoration, but it also trapped her in a hall of mirrors, surrounded by reflections she did not always recognize. She carried expectations on her shoulders long before the world knew her name. And even as she rose to become one of the highest-paid, most influential actresses of her generation, there were nights when she sat alone, stripped of the armor of characters she portrayed, and faced the silence she tried so hard to outrun. This documentary is not simply about a career. It is about the cost of becoming an icon, about the invisible battles fought behind magazine covers, behind billion-dollar franchises, behind the bright, flawless imagery that hides the truth of how deeply human she truly is. For Scarlett, every step forward came with a shadow behind it. Every triumph had a counterpart of doubt. Every soaring moment hid an ache that fame could not fix. And somewhere between the girl who whispered her first lines on a small theater stage and the woman who stood alone on the world's biggest screens, something fragile cracked inside her, not into brokenness, but into complexity. This is the story of a woman who walked into the world's brightest lights while carrying her darkest fears. A woman who built an empire on roles that demanded strength, even when she longed for softness. A woman whose silence was sometimes louder than applause. Scarlett Johansson became a symbol of power, mystery, and cinematic magnetism. But symbols are lonely, and power has a cost. Behind the elegance, behind the calm, behind the mastery that audiences worship, lies a journey marked by struggle, sacrifice, reinvention, and the yearning to be understood not as a superhero, but as a human being. This is not the story the headlines tell. This is not the image curated by publicists. This is not the myth. This is the truth beneath the myth, the emotional architecture of a life lived under pressure, under expectation, under the weight of eyes that never stop watching. A life shaped by ambition, haunted by silence, saved by art. A life where every victory carved a new scar. A life where becoming Scarlett Johansson meant losing parts of the girl who once dreamed quietly in the shadows. As the curtain rises on this documentary, we begin not with the legend, but with the fragile heart beating beneath the legend's armor. A woman standing at the edge of fame, staring into a future she both longed for and feared. A a woman stepping into the light, knowing the light would never again let her go.
Origins and family roots. Long before Scarlett Johansson became a global icon, her story quietly unfolded in a modest New York apartment, far from the glossy world that would one day claim her. She was born into a family that carried more dreams than stability, more artistic hunger than certainty. Her mother, a woman with a heart tuned to the rhythms of cinema and storytelling, recognized early that her children were born with an unusual spark. Her father, a quiet and intensely private man from Denmark, approached the world like a painter who rarely shows his finished canvas, reserved, introspective, and protective of what mattered. These influences would shape Scarlett's inner world in ways she didn't fully understand until adulthood. The Johansson household was a portrait of contrasts, bursts of creativity and long stretches of financial struggle, laughter that filled the rooms and silence that seemed to sit heavily on certain nights. As a child, Scarlett watched her parents wrestle with dreams that were bigger than their circumstances. That unspoken tension, the painful gap between aspiration and reality, became a shadow she would feel in her own career years later, whenever she feared she wasn't enough. Scarlett was not alone. She grew up in a family of 4 siblings, each one uniquely expressive. She and her twin brother, Hunter, shared a bond that felt almost like a secret language. Where he was energetic and alive with curiosity, she was contemplative, a child who felt everything a little too deeply. Their closeness became a refuge from the noise of their surroundings. In a world that often felt unpredictable, the twins found a quiet, unbreakable certainty in each other. At the core of her childhood was the sense that love was present, even when stability wasn't. The family budget was thin, and no one pretended things were easy. But there was always a strange, persistent belief that somehow possibilities still existed. Her mother, sensing something luminous in her daughter, pushed her gently toward the arts, not out of ambition, but out of recognition. She could see that Scarlett carried a certain emotional frequency that ordinary life couldn't fully contain. Even in those early years, Scarlett felt split between 2 worlds. The real one, where bills piled up and parents argued quietly behind half-closed doors, and the imagined world she created inside her mind, where she could step into any character, become anyone, escape any limitation. This duality followed her into her acting career, where imagination became both a sanctuary and a burden. There was a fragility in her family that Scarlett absorbed instinctively. It taught her to listen more than speak, to feel more than express. And while this sensitivity would later become the foundation of her acting genius, it also planted seeds of doubt, whispers that told her she had to carry more than her small shoulders could hold, that she had to succeed, not just for herself, but for everyone who believed in her, because they needed to believe in something. As the years passed, the family fractured in ways that were both quiet and devastating. Her parents' marriage slowly dissolved, leaving emotional debris scattered in the spaces where certainty once lived. Scarlett, still young, learned the skill of emotional endurance far earlier than she should have. She understood too much for her age, and she felt too deeply to pretend otherwise. These origins, the love, the tension, the dreams, the instability, became the soil from which her talent would rise. Her acting was never simply technique, it was emotional archaeology. She was digging through the layers of her own life, even before she knew she was doing it. Every character she would later play held pieces of the girl who once sat on her bed, listening to the muffled sounds of adult heartbreak drifting through the walls. The roots of Scarlett Johansson's story were not glamorous. They were real, raw, imperfect. But from those roots grew a resilience so quietly powerful that the world would one day mistake it for effortless strength.
Childhood struggles and early influences. Scarlett's childhood was not defined by tragedy in the traditional sense, but by an emotional sensitivity that made every disappointment sting more sharply, every moment of uncertainty feel heavier than it should. She was a child who carried her emotions on the surface, transparent, exposed, unable to hide the pain she felt whenever the world became too loud, too unpredictable, too demanding. When her parents separated, something shifted inside her. She wouldn't fully understand it until years later, but the quiet fracture in her family became the blueprint for a lifelong fear that the things she loved most could fall apart without warning. It planted in her a fierce, almost desperate desire to hold on to the people and moments that made her feel safe. And when life inevitably changed again, she learned that heartbreak could begin long before adulthood. School was its own battlefield. Scarlett wasn't the shiny, confident child who easily blends into the crowd. She was the one who felt every emotion intensely, the one who cried easily, the one who sensed the disappointment or frustration of others as if it were her own. In a world that rewards those who speak loudly, her vulnerability sometimes made her a target, sometimes pushed her into emotional corners she didn't know how to escape. Teachers called her sensitive, with a tone that felt more like criticism than compassion. But inside that sensitivity was a powerful seed: empathy. When other children lashed out, she saw fear beneath their anger. When adults spoke sharply, she sensed exhaustion hiding behind their words. Her emotional radar was so sharp, so instinctive, that acting didn't feel like pretending. It felt like accessing a place she had always lived in. Movies became her sanctuary, not because they were glamorous or exciting, but because they showed her characters who felt broken, lost, misunderstood, characters who survived. She clung to the idea that through performance she could give shape to the emotions that overwhelmed her. Acting became her way of speaking when words failed her. Scarlett also developed an early awareness of the world beyond her own walls. Living in New York exposed her to people from every background, every struggle, every dream. She watched them, absorbed them, mirrored their stories. The city became her first acting teacher, a chaotic, unpredictable classroom filled with real human emotion. But hidden beneath her growing passion for performance was a darker truth. Scarlett often felt invisible. Even as she dreamed of being on screen, she struggled with a fear that she would never be seen for who she really was. In a large family where everyone was fighting their own silent battles, she sometimes felt like her own feelings took up too much space. That guilt shaped her into someone who tried hard, sometimes too hard, to be what others needed her to be. Whenever she spoke about wanting to act, the adults around her would exchange looks, hopeful but wary. They knew how unforgiving the entertainment world could be, and they feared her sensitive heart would break long before she had a chance to shine. But Scarlett wasn't driven by the desire for fame. She was driven by the need to release the emotions she carried. Acting wasn't her escape, it was her expression. Her earliest influences were not celebrities or Hollywood icons. They were the complex people around her,
Her mother's fierce resilience, her father's quiet introspection, her siblings' varied personalities, the strangers she watched in the streets of New York. They taught her something priceless, that every human being contains a universe of emotions, layered, conflicted, and endlessly compelling. Scarlett's struggles did not harden her, they deepened her. They didn't close her heart, they expanded it. And they shaped a performer who could communicate entire lifetimes of emotion with a single look. This emotional depth would become her greatest gift and later one of her heaviest burdens.
First steps into career. Scarlett's entrance into the world of acting did not happen with a spotlight or a dramatic breakthrough. It began quietly, almost invisibly, long before anyone knew her name. As a young child, she would sit in the corner of her family's small apartment and practice scenes in front of an imaginary audience, whispering lines to herself, experimenting with voices and emotions as though the tiny room were a stage large enough to hold her entire future. But the real shift came when her mother, recognizing a spark too bright to ignore, began taking her to auditions. Scarlett was still just a child, small, fragile, with a face that carried more emotion than most adults could express. The casting rooms were intimidating, filled with children who had rehearsed smiles and practiced confidence, coached to perfection by parents who treated auditions like battlegrounds. Scarlett, in contrast, walked in with nothing but raw sincerity. She wasn't polished, she wasn't trained, she wasn't pretending, she simply felt. Those early auditions were brutal. She was told she sounded too raspy, too serious, too intense, too grown. But beneath every rejection, she sensed a strange truth. Her differences were not weaknesses. They were signs that she didn't fit the mold and maybe wasn't meant to. Her first small roles came almost by accident. Commercials, minor appearances, tiny background parts. Nothing glamorous, but everything meaningful. Each moment on set felt like stepping into a world where she finally belonged. She absorbed everything: how cameras moved, how actors prepared, how directors spoke, how stories were crafted. While other children fidgeted between takes, Scarlett watched with the stillness of someone who understood that these early steps were shaping her destiny. But while her career was slowly igniting, her internal world was shifting in ways she didn't fully comprehend. Scarlett was young, too young to understand the cost of being in an industry that demands emotional exposure. Every role she played opened doors inside her that were not yet ready to be opened. She found herself feeling things far beyond her years. Pain she'd never experienced, joy she couldn't explain, loss she had never endured. Acting was not just a job, it was emotional excavation. School became secondary. While other kids talked about weekend plans, Scarlett spent her days auditioning, rehearsing, learning lines, getting rejected, trying again. Her friends changed frequently. Her routines were unpredictable. The world expected her to be both a child and a professional, a contradiction she carried heavily. Even her own family struggles followed her into her career. The financial burdens, the emotional fractures, the pressure of being the one with potential. It all created a sense of urgency that pushed her forward. She wasn't chasing fame. She was running from the fear of failing the people she loved. Her breakthrough was still far away, but the building blocks were forming. A unique voice, an emotional intelligence far beyond her age, and a resilience shaped not by ambition, but by necessity. She learned to handle disappointment with grace, success with humility, and the demands of the industry with a maturity that belied her youth. And yet, beneath her early achievements was a quiet loneliness. Scarlett often felt like she lived in two worlds, the world of real-life difficulties and the world of make-believe, where she was beginning to find her identity. She didn't know which version of herself was real, the child seeking comfort or the actress learning to transform pain into art. Those first steps into her career were not glamorous. They were messy, emotional, confusing, and deeply formative. But they ignited something in her, a belief that acting was more than her passion. It was her purpose, her escape, her way of making sense of a world she didn't yet understand. Scarlett was not just entering a career, she was stepping into the lifelong story she was born to tell.
Breakthrough moment. Scarlett's breakthrough did not come with a thunderclap. It arrived quietly, slowly, before suddenly exploding into a force that changed the trajectory of her entire life. She was barely a teenager when she began attracting attention, but the moment that etched her name into Hollywood's consciousness was her haunting, unforgettable performance in The Horse Whisperer, 1998. The role demanded something most young actors couldn't access: grief, trauma, vulnerability, and the delicate emotional balance of someone trying to rebuild themselves after tragedy. But Scarlett didn't simply perform the emotions, she became them. Her eyes carried the weight of invisible storms. Her voice trembled with the rawness of someone who understood loss without ever having fully experienced it. Critics called her performance instinctively mature, beyond her age, unsettlingly real. But what the world didn't know was how deeply the role carved into her. Acting alongside veterans who commanded the screen, Scarlett learned a painful truth about her talent. It was inseparable from her emotional openness. To bring a character to life, she had to offer pieces of herself, pieces she could never fully reclaim. This realization frightened her, but it also exhilarated her. Something inside her whispered that she had found the one thing she was born to do. With The Horse Whisperer, Hollywood noticed her. Casting directors began calling. Doors that had once been impenetrable now opened effortlessly. Yet Scarlett remained grounded. She didn't crave attention, she feared it. The sudden spotlight felt too bright, too revealing. She had spent her childhood trying to protect her sensitive heart. Now the world wanted access to it. Her next transformation came with Ghost World, 2001, a role that showcased her sharp intelligence, deadpan humor, and emotional depth. But the performance that truly changed everything, the one that turned Scarlett Johansson into a cinematic force, was Lost in Translation, 2003. At just 19, she delivered a performance that felt like a confession: subtle, fragile, introspective, achingly human. She embodied loneliness with a realism that left audiences breathless. Her quiet expressions told stories of isolation, yearning, emotional disorientation, the very feelings she had carried from childhood. The film became a masterpiece, and she became a revelation. Lost in Translation did more than make her famous. It made her seen. Suddenly, she was not just the talented young actress, she was the new face of cinematic vulnerability, the performer who could communicate heartbreak without a single word. Awards followed, praise followed, the world followed. But success for Scarlett was always complicated. With every accolade came the silent pressure to deliver more, to prove herself again, to grow up faster than she wanted to.
She was still searching for herself, even as the world declared they already knew her. Each breakthrough expanded her horizons, but chipped away at her privacy. The industry embraced her, but the intensity of that embrace often overwhelmed her. She found herself becoming a symbol of beauty, of mystery, of emotional depth before she had even fully formed her own identity. But beneath the rising fame was a truth she carried quietly. Her success was not built on confidence, it was built on courage. Courage to feel deeply, courage to be vulnerable in front of millions, courage to expose her soul again and again for the sake of storytelling. Her breakthrough moment was not a single scene or a single performance. It was the awakening of a deeper, more complex journey, a journey of resilience, a journey of courage, a journey that would only grow more demanding as her star rose higher.
Peak career and golden era. Scarlett Johansson's golden era did not arrive suddenly. It unfolded like a storm building on the horizon, each cloud carrying the weight of destiny. After Lost in Translation, she could have remained the quiet, introspective actress Hollywood admired from a distance. Instead, she transformed. She grew sharper, wiser, bolder. She stepped into a new realm of storytelling, one that demanded not just emotion, but strength. Strength she didn't yet know she possessed. Her career evolved with a kind of fearless curiosity. She refused to be boxed into a single archetype. One moment she was delivering haunting vulnerability in intimate dramas, and the next she was commanding the screen in large-scale productions that required physical power and emotional restraint in equal measure. She became the actress directors called when they needed both softness and steel. But nothing shifted her public identity more dramatically than her transformation into Natasha Romanoff, Marvel's Black Widow. At first, some questioned the casting, but Scarlett saw in the character something no one else did: a survivor's heart, a woman whose strength was rooted not in perfection, but in damage. She understood Natasha because she understood what it meant to build armor from brokenness. And when she stepped onto the set of Iron Man 2, everything changed. The world didn't just see a superhero, they saw a woman who carried pain like a silent weapon. As the Marvel Cinematic Universe grew, so did Scarlett's presence within it. Film after film, her character evolved from mysterious assassin to emotional anchor, from supporting player to the heart of a franchise built on gods, geniuses, and legends. But behind the action sequences and the global fame was a deeper truth. Black Widow allowed Scarlett to explore parts of herself she had never voiced out loud. The guilt of childhood, the longing for belonging, the illusion of strength. Natasha was not simply a character, she was a mirror Scarlett hadn't realized she needed. At the same time, her dramatic career soared. She delivered unforgettable performances in Her, playing a voice with more emotional depth than most physical characters. She broke hearts in Marriage Story, where her portrayal of a woman unraveling under the weight of a failing marriage was so painfully real that audiences felt as if they were watching someone's soul fracture on screen. And in Under the Skin, she stripped away all human familiarity to portray a being searching for meaning inside borrowed humanity. A film that became a metaphor for her own internal search for identity beneath layers of fame. Awards and nominations piled up. Critics wrote essays trying to dissect her emotional reach. Directors praised her discipline, her intelligence, her uncanny ability to elevate any scene simply by existing within it. She became a global symbol of talent, of beauty, of complexity. But fame, even at its highest point, carried shadows. During her golden era, Scarlett worked relentlessly. Months on set, months away from home, red carpets that glittered but often felt cold, millions of eyes watching, judging, loving, criticizing. She became both adored and misunderstood, a paradox she learned to accept even when it exhausted her spirit. People saw the glamour, few saw the cost. They saw the world's brightest star, not the woman navigating an emotional battlefield behind the scenes. Her golden era was brilliant, yes, but brilliance, she learned, often burns hottest right before it scars. And yet, Scarlett kept moving, kept transforming, kept giving the world pieces of herself with each performance. Her golden era was not defined by fame. It was defined by her courage to keep feeling, even when the world expected her to be invincible.
Personal life and hidden pain. Behind the applause, behind the box office records, behind the global adoration, Scarlett Johansson existed in a much quieter, much more fragile world, one that fans rarely saw and one she rarely spoke about. Fame, for all its rewards, has a way of magnifying every insecurity, every ache, every unresolved wound. And for someone as emotionally open as Scarlett, the pressure was relentless. Her personal life, especially in her 20s, became a labyrinth of uncertainty. As the world celebrated her rising career, she struggled privately with relationships that buckled under the weight of distance, scrutiny, and the emotional demands of her work. Scarlett had always longed for simple, grounding love, the kind of connection she never fully experienced in her fractured childhood household. But fame made simplicity complicated. People fell in love with the idea of her, not the woman trying to navigate life beneath the spotlight. Her early marriages, despite moments of genuine affection and hope, were marked by misunderstandings, mismatched expectations, and the painful reality that even the strongest love cannot always withstand the relentless rhythm of fame. Each relationship that unraveled left scars deeper than she admitted publicly. Scarlett was not broken, but she was bruised by the quiet fear that she was somehow difficult to love. The media did not help. Every heartbreak became a headline. Every private misstep became entertainment. Every tear became speculation. And while she learned to hide her vulnerability from cameras, the emotional toll settled in the spaces between her public appearances. She often felt alone, even in the most crowded rooms, her heart isolated by an industry that demanded emotional exposure but granted little emotional safety. Her internal struggles deepened in the years she portrayed Black Widow. The character's trauma began mirroring her own unspoken pain. Natasha wrestled with guilt, identity, and the longing for family, echoes of Scarlett's life that she once described as hauntingly familiar. She poured her own wounds into the role, letting the character's story become a vessel for her own buried emotions. What the world called acting was for her emotional therapy disguised as performance. Motherhood brought a shift, a softening, a recentering. Becoming a mother gave Scarlett a sense of belonging she had chased for years. For the first time, love did not feel conditional, performative, or temporary. It felt pure. It felt grounding. But motherhood also heightened her fear of vulnerability. She became protective of her children in a way that surprised even her, determined to shield them from the invasive world that had consumed so much of her own innocence. Still, the hidden pain persisted. The loneliness of fame, the exhaustion of constantly being watched, the pressure to be everything, hero, mother, icon, advocate, without ever revealing the emotional weight she carried.
She once admitted that she often felt like she was living several lives at once, each demanding a different version of her, each pulling her further from the quiet girl who once dreamed in the corners of a small New York apartment. Scarlett Johansson's personal life was not defined by scandal or tragedy. It was defined by emotional endurance. She carried heartbreak without bitterness, fear without surrender, loneliness without losing her capacity for love. She learned that sometimes the most painful battles are not the ones the world sees, but the ones fought in silence. If her roles taught her anything, it was this: the strongest people are not those who feel the least, but those who feel deeply and still rise again and again.
Turning point. Decline. Every great life story reaches a moment when the world's applause begins to fade just enough for silence to be heard again. For Scarlett Johansson, that turning point did not come with a sudden scandal or a dramatic collapse. It came gradually, like dusk creeping across a sky that had once been blindingly bright. The years of constant work, years of carrying emotional weight on screen and off, began to leave invisible cracks. She had spent her youth becoming one of the most recognizable faces in modern cinema, but recognition is not the same thing as understanding. When the Marvel era approached its final crescendo, Scarlett could feel a shift deep inside her. Natasha Romanoff, the character she had poured so much of her soul into, was approaching her final chapter. Filming Avengers Endgame was not just the end of a franchise, it was the end of a long emotional tether that had tied Scarlett to a symbol of strength she had needed more than she realized. When Natasha sacrificed herself in the film, something inside Scarlett felt eerily similar, like closing the door on a version of herself she wasn't ready to say goodbye to. Behind the scenes, she wrestled with exhaustion. Years of public scrutiny had carved away at her privacy until she felt exposed in ways no human should have to endure. Every opinion she voiced became a headline. Every misstep became global discourse. Every expression was dissected. She wasn't just an actress anymore. She was a symbol people projected their ideas onto, sometimes praise, sometimes harsh judgment. And then came the industry tension. A legal battle with one of the largest studios in the world, triggered by the release strategy of Black Widow, brought Scarlett to the center of Hollywood's most uncomfortable conversation. Fairness, respect, and the value of an artist in a corporate machine. The world watched as she stood up for herself, not out of greed, but out of principle. Yet the emotional toll was undeniable. Standing alone against a system that often dismisses those it claims to celebrate drained her spirit more than she ever admitted. The turning point was not a fall, it was a realization. A recognition that the industry she had given her entire life to had taken more than it returned. That performing emotional truth for millions did not guarantee anyone would understand her own truth. That fame could feel more like a cage than a platform. Her decline was quiet, not a disappearance, but a withdrawal. She stopped accepting roles simply to keep momentum. She stepped back from the constant cycle of premieres, interviews, and public dissection. She chose projects with more precision, more caution, more awareness of her own emotional limits. In that silence, she began confronting the parts of herself she had long avoided, the loneliness she had hidden beneath roles, the exhaustion of carrying a franchise, the vulnerability of being human in an industry that worships images more than people. People called it
A career slowdown. They were wrong. It was a survival instinct. This turning point was not the end of Scarlett Johansson's story. It was the moment she stopped running toward the world's expectations and started walking toward her own. A moment of reckoning, a moment of healing, a moment of choosing herself, even if it meant letting the world think she was fading. What looked like decline from the outside was in truth the beginning of becoming whole again. Legacy and meaning. Scarlett Johansson's legacy cannot be reduced to awards or box office numbers because her impact extends beyond measurable achievements. Her true legacy lives in the emotional imprint she leaves behind, in the characters who felt human because she dared to expose her own humanity, and in the audiences who saw parts of themselves reflected in her vulnerability. She became one of the defining actresses of her generation, not by being flawless, but by being honest. In every role, she carried pieces of her childhood, her fears, her emotional intensity. When she played silent longing in Lost in Translation, women who felt unseen recognized themselves. When she gave voice to an AI in Her, viewers felt the ache of disembodied connection. When she unraveled in Marriage Story, couples around the world felt the raw truth of love slipping through their fingers. And when she became Natasha Romanoff, she gave millions a new kind of female hero, one whose strength was born from pain, not perfection. Her legacy is built on emotional bravery. She showed the world that strength and vulnerability are not opposites, they are inseparable. She proved that quiet performances can be louder than explosions, that a single look can express more than 1,000 lines, that a whisper can be more powerful than a scream. But beyond performance, Scarlett's legacy is one of perseverance. She entered the industry as a sensitive child and grew into a woman who refused to surrender her inner world for the sake of public approval. She faced rejection, scrutiny, objectification, legal battles, and emotional fatigue. But each challenge shaped her without hardening her. Her career stands as a testament to the complexity of womanhood in Hollywood. A woman allowed to be soft and strong, flawed and determined, fragile and unbreakable. A woman who navigated fame without losing her authenticity, even when the world tried to define her. And perhaps her most meaningful legacy lies in what she gave to the next generation of actresses. She opened doors by demanding fairness, by proving that female characters can be layered and powerful, by showing that an actress's worth is not defined by her appearance, but by her emotional truth. Young performers today look at Scarlett and see possibility. They see a path that is difficult but not impossible. To audiences, her work became more than entertainment. It became emotional companionship. People watched her characters cry through loneliness, mourned lost love, search for identity, fight for redemption, and felt less alone in their own struggles. She reminded the world that every person carries invisible battles, and that art can be a bridge between hearts that would otherwise never meet. Her legacy is not fame, it is connection. She leaves behind a body of work that will continue to speak long after the lights fade. Her characters will keep breathing in the hearts of those who saw their own reflections in her performances. Her emotional courage will continue guiding countless artists who fear being too sensitive in a world built on facades. And her story, full of beauty, pain, resilience, and evolution, will continue reminding people that even the brightest stars are made of the same fragile material as the rest of us. Her legacy is not a monument, it is a heartbeat, steady, enduring, human.
Rebirth, a new era. Every life, especially a life lived under the world's spotlight, must eventually confront the question, who am I when the applause fades? For Scarlett Johansson, the answer did not come at all at once. It arrived slowly, quietly, like dawn stretching across a long night. After years of exhaustion, public pressure, and emotional depletion, she entered a chapter not defined by fame or career milestones, but by rebirth. This new era began with something deceptively simple: stillness. For the first time since childhood, Scarlett allowed herself to pause. No film sets, no press tours, no frantic schedules dictating her every breath. She spent time with her family, nurturing the relationships she once had to fit between shoots. She walked through the city without acting like she was being watched. She learned what it felt like to move through the world as a person instead of an image. And in that stillness, creativity returned. Not the kind shaped by studio contracts or fan expectations, but the kind born from genuine emotion. The creativity she had as a child, long before anyone cared about her face on a poster. She began reading scripts again, but differently this time. She no longer asked, "Will this be successful?" She asked, "Does this move me? Does this heal me? Does this say something that needs to be said?" Rebirth rarely comes without risk, and Scarlett embraced that truth. Instead of chasing blockbuster momentum, she gravitated towards smaller, more intimate projects, stories about identity, motherhood, loss, resilience. Stories that allowed her to explore emotional corners she had neglected in the noise of franchise fame. The world noticed. Critics recognized a new depth in her performances, not because she reinvented herself, but because she finally gave herself permission to be fully human on screen. Behind the camera, a new chapter unfolded as well. Scarlett began producing more actively, shaping stories instead of simply performing them. She championed diverse voices, advocated for fairness, and invested in filmmakers who valued emotional truth over spectacle. It was a shift from being the face of a film to being the heartbeat behind it. In this space, she discovered a strength that was quieter but far more powerful than any superhero persona she had played. Rebirth also meant redefining her relationship with fame. Where she once tried to outrun it or control it, she learned to let it coexist with her identity rather than consume it. She set boundaries, firm ones. She protected her privacy, celebrated her individuality, and refused to allow the world's projections to dictate her self-worth. This newfound balance became a kind of armor, not the heavy steel of superheroes, but something softer and stronger: self-knowledge. What surprised her most was how the public responded. Instead of fading from relevance, Scarlett gained a different kind of respect, one rooted not in hype, but in authenticity. People admired her for stepping back, for choosing her emotional well-being, for returning only when she had something meaningful to say. The industry, too, began to view her not just as an actress, but as an artist with intention and vision. Then came the moment that truly marked her rebirth, a role unlike anything she had done before, one that required deep vulnerability and reflection. It was a story about a woman confronting her own past, her own grief, her own sense of identity. Scarlett didn't simply act the role, she lived it. She poured years of unspoken emotion into each scene, allowing the cracks in her heart to become the most powerful part of her performance.
Audiences felt it. Critics felt it. But more importantly, Scarlett felt it. For the first time in a long time, she looked at her work and saw not the pressure of expectation, but the beauty of expression. The film was not just a success, it was a declaration that her new era had officially begun. This rebirth was not a return to who she once was, it was an evolution, calmer, wiser, more grounded. A Scarlett who no longer needed to prove herself, a Scarlett who no longer sought validation from the outside world, a Scarlett who knew that her greatest strength had always been her emotional truth. And with this new clarity came freedom, the freedom to choose roles that nourished her spirit, to collaborate with artists who respected her craft, to live a life defined by intention rather than obligation. Rebirth is not a comeback story. It is a story of rediscovery, a story of becoming whole, a story of rising not from ashes, but from understanding. Scarlett Johansson stepped into this new era not as the world's icon, not as the blockbuster heroine, not as the endlessly dissected celebrity, but as a woman who survived herself, found herself, and chose herself. Her future no longer looked like a continuation of her past. It looked like something entirely new, quietly powerful, deeply personal, and profoundly alive.